Would you like to play some football?
And welcome to another edition of Gridiron The Gospel, a faith in college football podcast. We're just wrapping up week 8 in college football. I'm George Schroeder. Dean and Sarah joins me. And man, there's so many things that happened on the field, really Friday and Saturday. You don't want to talk about Friday, but we have to. But we got to start with another Sunday happening, just like last week. Last week, James Franklin was out at Penn State. This week, one that we probably were a little less surprised by, although it happened after a win. Florida beats Mississippi State. And the next morning, Sunday morning, we're recording this Sunday night, Billy Napier is out, 22-23 at Florida. I don't think anybody's really surprised by that. But the Gators just keep cycling through coaches in hopes of getting back to what they had been really under Urban Meyer. And before that, obviously, Steve Spurrier. So I'm not surprised that Billy Napier's gone. And I guess I'm going to get past getting surprised by the timing, Dean, because among other things, there's going to be a lot of openings. There are already a ton of openings, and you need to be identifying your guy because he may get snapped up by somebody else. So if you think you're going to make the move. So thoughts on that? Obviously, You're not a Gator fan. You're in Tallahassee and you're a Miami fan, but thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm around a lot of Gators, though, being in the state of Florida. One, you made me a little bit sad by mentioning we're on week 8 of college football. Like, it's not that far from being over. It just goes so fast, the regular season. So I'm thankful for a longer playoff now to give us some more football. And the Napier thing, I mean, I thought it was going to happen last year. And people wanted him gone after the Miami game in the opener last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Calling for it when Miami went up there and Cam Ward, ripped him to shreds. And then he saw some promise from Lagway second half of the season, and it looked like they were turning the corner. Had a little bit of hype preseason. And it just, again, never took off again. You lose to USF, considered in the state of Florida like a tier below state program, below what people call the big 3 here, Florida State, Miami, and Florida. And that started again. Then he loses to Miami. Then a little glimmer of hope. LSU 5 interceptions, but a glimmer of hope against Texas. Loses to Texas A&M. Then Mississippi State they pull off a miracle against them. I mean, how many guys get fired the day after a win in the middle of the season? And usually it'd be, if you get fired after a win, it'd be the last game of the season. You're being evaluated on the whole season. But around here, they're saying they're going to shoot for the moon. They're going to try to get Lane Kiffin. In my experience of following the coaching carousel, the coaching name that's mentioned early is never the guy. The name that comes out in October, November, is never the actual guy that's going to be hired. So I'm not buying that because just of that. But we'll see. But a big job opening, right? I mean, University of Florida is a huge job.
Yeah, Florida and Penn State are the 2 big jobs in the cycle for sure. I heard John Gruden was shopping there in Gainesville. So
of course, the famous name every year. Yep.
Florida. I'm just going to run through them: Florida, Penn State, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, UCLA, Oregon State, Stanford, UAB, Kent State, UAB. Trent Dilfer was fired a week ago.
Hey, Alex Mortensen got the win as the interim against undefeated Memphis.
Absolutely. Chris Mortensen, the late Chris Mortensen's son.
Yeah.
Jay Norvell out as Colorado State's coach today as well. And again, we're recording this on Sunday night. So a smaller job, but I'm sure you guys are paying close attention to it. In fact,
hey, Sonny Lubick, former Hurricane defensive coordinator, a longtime head coach of Colorado State.
That's right. The Rams, Cam the Ram, as their mascot goes. Our son Christopher knows that one. So lots of coaching jobs open, more to come, I think. Because there's some other look. I think the patience level is gone. Whatever there used to be, it's over. And when you start to see sort of a lot of these jobs opening, it can kind of create a crescendo or a momentum to where you're like, well, we got to do it too. So if I were Hugh Freeze, I'd be very concerned. If I were Brian Kelly, I'd be at least mildly concerned.
What about Dabo?
I think Dabo, you might have some people that want to get rid of him, but I think he can leave if he wants.
I mean, James Franklin was in the playoffs last season.
Look, he never won 2 national titles and
what
took
about
Clemson.
Sark? Could Sark be in trouble?
I can't imagine that. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that. We got to talk about Miami and Louisville. We got to talk about Texas A&M. We got to talk about Alabama beating Tennessee. The cigars got lit up at Bryant-Denny Stadium. We got to talk about Georgia stopping Ole Miss and Vandy beating LSU. How about those Commodores? And probably shouldn't start with Texas eking out a victory over terrible Kentucky team Now, it's on the road, but you don't beat Kentucky 13-10 and get lucky doing it.
In
We can just,
overtime.
I don't know what to make of this Texas team, because if you look back at the Red River Shootout, obviously they had a dominant defensive performance, and Arch Manning played a clean football game. Didn't play great. He played a clean football game. Didn't make mistakes, made a couple of nice plays. He was back to the Arch Manning that people were like so concerned about before the Oklahoma game, in the Kentucky game. So I don't think Sark's in any trouble. He's not in any trouble. But, Texas's season is still teetering on the edge of being it's already a disappointment. It could be like a complete and utter disappointment pretty quick here.
2 more names to look out for. Shane Beamer could get on the hot seat, and Fickle up at Wisconsin.
I'd say that's white hot. That's
Yeah.
white hot. The only question is, do they want to spend the money? And all this
Yeah, he's in
buyout
big
money
trouble.
is people are going to have to spend it. You're the dummies that put it in the contract. You're going to have to spend it. So.
And I think the money's part of the no tolerance and no patience now. These boosters are saying, we're paying NIL money. We're paying these players this level of money. We're paying the coaches this level of money. And they see other teams, winning, and they get panicky. Especially if it's a rival. Auburn would always react to Saban and fire a coach really quickly.
Yeah.
You look at Florida. Looking back, I still can't figure out why they fired Dan Mullen. The guy went to an SEC championship. It wasn't like it was 10 years before he got fired. So it's good. There is a classic. I know it's cliche, but the old careful what you wish for. It really is become a thing where these premature hirings are coming to bite a lot of programs in the rear end.
Well, Todd Unzicker, who filled in for you last week, made the point, and of course he saw some of this up close, but he made the point when it came to James Franklin getting fired at Penn State. Careful what you wish for. Most of the time when you replace a guy like James Franklin, he likened him to Mark Richt, who all he did was win 10 games all the time at Georgia, but you usually don't have a Kirby Smart. It's usually more like Billy Napier, who comes in afterward. Careful what you wish for. Now, you can swing for the fences and see what happens, and I guess we will. So, on the field. You were on the sidelines on Friday.
Yes, it was great. What a cool experience, but what a rough outcome for me being a Hurricane fan.
Yeah, at Miami. Louisville, by the way, better probably than most of us are giving them credit for, is a good team, and they dropped Miami from the ranks of unbeatens. Look, I don't think this doesn't decimate the season like it could if Miami was didn't already have some great victories, but it revealed some alarming things. Carson Beck had a bad game.
It was
a bad
game. And Miami was going down to win. Now, granted, how they got there was a pretty fluky moment with the fumble. Miami caused the fumble, but Louisville had a 2-touchdown lead, and they had the ball, and they fumble. Miami returns it inside the 10, scores the next play. Freshman Malachi Tony, who's been a superstar, for Miami, kind of one of the new big names in college football. And then the defense does its job, gets the ball back, and Miami's marching down the field. And that turnover, when Miami's field goal kicker is very reliable, and a field goal from there, he would have made it, to go into overtime bare minimum. I thought Miami was going to win the game, like in regulation, but it just didn't happen. So it wasn't a 2-touchdown lead, it was a 10-point lead. But it just was one of those games where Beck was off. Miami's running game got shut down, averaged like 2.6 yards a carry. And that was Louisville's game plan. It was like stop the run and make Beck throw. And you could see as the game went on, Miami lost confidence in Beck because all of a sudden they're throwing nothing but kind of slip screens, and just it was just really it was a rough night for the Canes, but still had a chance to win. And even though a game where they had 4 interceptions, they were in a position to win the game. So what's interesting about our common kind of modern moment for college football is Miami has a clear path to the college football playoff than it does to the ACC championship.
Right. They might not make it to the SEC championship.
Ohio State last year, right? National champs, didn't make it Big Ten to the Big Ten championship game. It's definitely a different time, in the game right now in terms of how that came to be a reality.
Yeah. Doesn't end the season. No. You start to lose your margin for error. But look, I'm just going to tell you, with the resume they have, 10-2 might get them into the playoff, but they may or may not make it to the ACC title game, as you said, and let me jump ahead real quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but Texas Tech, I think people were starting to come around to the idea that's a pretty good team, and they were starting to think, okay, that's the Big 12's best team. They, hit the NIL and the portal really hard and sort of bought a team the way you can now. They went out to the desert to Tempe and got beat by Arizona State, the reigning Big 12 champ. Sam Leavitt played really well and beat them, and it was a fine game. Texas Tech, with 1 loss, probably still looks like the best team in the Big 12 to me, although we could talk about BYU. We could do some, we could talk about some other things. What they don't have either, because the league is so big, they don't have a clear path at the moment to the Big 12 title game. And if they don't get to the Big 12 title game, this is what's different about them versus a Miami. It doesn't matter that they were ranked in the top 10. Their resume doesn't show. They might get left out of the playoff. That's the kind of thing that you get right now with what the Big 12 kind of currently is, which is kind of a lot of good teams, but there's no real elite separation. And we thought maybe it was Texas Tech. Maybe it's not. So just, I don't know. But, here we are mid-October, 8 weeks in, unfortunately, and about 5 weeks to go. And we can start talking about the playoff. And the thing I love about the playoff, and I don't love some things about it, is if there's 12 slots, there's about 30 teams right now that think they've got a shot to get in. That wasn't the case with a 4-team playoff.
A lot of parity right now. There really is. Ohio State, Indiana, probably Alabama at the top, maybe Georgia. And then after that, I thought Miami was pretty close. I think Miami is better than they showed against Louisville. But Louisville's also a really good team. I don't see why they're going to lose a game. I think they still play Clemson, maybe. Miami plays SMU still. But I wonder what are your thoughts on this? What do you think the future of conference championship games looks like? Do you think those ever get done away with and you just name the champion whoever had the best regular season finish? Do you think we get there again?
Yeah, as soon as TV makes them whole for the $35-40 million they get for a conference title game.
Oh, it's that much. Okay, never mind.
So that the conference gets, right? So as soon as TV's going to have some alternative programming for that, right? Because that's what this is for ESPN, for Fox. But the way that the alternative programming is an earlier round of the playoff, because you expand the playoffs probably. So I do think that will happen at some point. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a necessary, or it's just a result of these supersized conferences. I'm not going to call them super conferences, supersized conferences. So,
yeah, because they're not irrelevant, because if you're a team like you can get in by winning it, like if that's so it's not irrelevant to certain teams trying to make it, obviously. But they had become irrelevant almost on the more national stage, where it's like, okay, we didn't win the SEC. Okay, we're going to win the national championship. No big deal. Like that kind of idea. It's really something.
Well, this is why one of the reasons I like conference championship games is because it's one of the few things you can actually achieve on the field. And what I mean by that is the idea of having an automatic qualifying bid for the conference champion, which for the top 5 rated conference champions, that's how they do it now. And I don't think they're going to do away with that, is you can win that on the field, which means if you're 8-4, but you're whatever that is in league, with 1 loss in league, and you get in there and you upset somebody, you're in the playoff. I like that. You can win your way in. Now, did you deserve to be in there? I don't know. You won the conference championship, so I think you did. And if the other team that was the favorite in that conference title game gets in as an at-large, well, good. You got in on your resume. If you didn't, you should have won that game. So I like that. And so I hope it doesn't go away.
They're just too large. Like Miami, again, I'm talking about Miami here. That's my kind of main frame of reference. They have Virginia ahead of them. They have Louisville ahead of them, Georgia Tech ahead of them. Louisville has the tiebreaker against Miami, but Miami doesn't play Georgia Tech, doesn't play Virginia. Virginia and Georgia Tech don't play each other. There's just it just drives me crazy. It's like, can we shrink these things a little bit so you actually have to play each other and not the way that these teams are hoping to get into their conference championship game. It's not by winning games. It's by other teams losing games, which I just don't love that. But I do appreciate that it's on the field. So I agree with you on that. Who do you think wins the SEC right now? Like, who's kind of your midseason SEC pick?
Well, I think Alabama looks like the best team in the SEC. Rolling. Now, that said, every time when I say that, I can hear the howls from people at our church who are big Aggie fans, right? And so we give them short shrift all the time. And I think we do. They're 7-0. Now, they didn't play tremendously well against Arkansas, but they were in control of that game. 7-0. They've got a really good defense, although Arkansas did light them up a little bit. First time somebody's done that. And their offense is a whole lot better than people give them credit for. Marcel Reed is a steady, good quarterback. I think it's possible they could be the best team. We'll see. They're going to LSU this week. We'll see what that looks like. But after losing that game to Florida State, which looks more and more inexplicable, Alabama looks like a world beater. That's kind of where I am.
Simpson's probably going to make a Heisman run. Texas A&M, it does feel like they're the team that nobody mentions. I always forget that they're doing what they're doing right now. But here's what they robbed us of. Texas A&M robbed us of Bobby Petrino being named the full-time head coach again of Arkansas. Because if he'd have pulled that off, it'd have been an emotional hire. Because there's some old boosters in Fayetteville that want Bobby back.
Well, there's a bunch of them that want him back.
If he'd have done it, man, he'd have been back. I'm telling you.
Against all decency, they want him back. So,
Yeah.
and look, I've got friends and family, right? Obviously, I grew up in, it's not obvious. I grew up in Little Rock. Some of the listeners know that.
There's a hog
Friends,
hat behind you.
there is. That's the
Help
original. If
yourself.
you guys are on YouTube, it's the original Uncle Heavy Hog hat from the 70s. My dad's, and I don't know that he gave it to me, but it's here. So yeah, I grew up an Arkansas fan. I got friends and family that are big Arkansas fans, and I'm just telling you, the idea that they could get Petrino back and roll it back to 2012 before he rolled off the road on the motorcycle is real. That is something that people want. I think that would be a terrible decision on multiple levels, but they're not consulting me on that. So, that's all right. But you're right. They might have crowned him right then.
Yes,
Let's take
I'm
the
telling you
interim
what
tag off.
happened. Like Lane Kiffin getting fired on the tarmac, Bobby would have been knighted on the tarmac after the game. What happened?
On the turf. It doesn't matter what Hunter Yurachek, the AD, actually thinks. I have no idea what he thinks. He would have been kneeling and saying, please be our coach.
Excellent. Robbed us of this.
Yeah, I'm saying thank goodness.
Yeah.
saying thank goodness. All right, so I do want to talk about Alabama. Look, they're just better than Tennessee. Josh Heupel's got himself a good team. They're not as good as they were a year ago, but they're good. But Alabama's really good. And then Georgia couldn't stop Ole Miss at all. And then the fourth quarter finally stopped them. We need to stop sleeping on. I don't know how good Georgia is. I just know they're resilient. I know they're resilient, and I think I think they got a chance to be really good.
I'll never bet against Kirby Smart. I mean, how proven is he over and over again? And also, how about the coaching job? Let's talk about someone who has won everywhere he's been, Kalen DeBoer, right? What happened against Florida State, they looked terrible. I went off on our podcast. It was how awful that I watched every snap of that game being in Tallahassee. They looked disinterested. They looked overmatched. I mean, I was like, if this team shows up every week, they're losing 4 games. Which for Alabama, is DEFCON 5, right? I mean, they're losing 4 games.
Well, he would have been on the Billy Napier train out of town.
He'd already be gone. No doubt. He'd have been fired before. He'd have been James Franklin the week before that. But to see what's happened since then, it shows the kind of coach he really is, that he is the real deal.
He really is the real deal. And that team looks put together on both sides of the ball. Ty Simpson, you mentioned him earlier, is just, and I love the storyline for Ty Simpson. I mean, he sat behind other guys.
And Ryan Williams is rolling again. He's kind of found his form, it looks like, once again.
Yeah, they're flat good. And so I don't know who the best team in the SEC is. It might be Texas A&M. It might be Alabama. I think there's a drop after that. It's not a big drop, but Georgia, So, there's another team that we got to talk about real quick while we're in the SEC.
Boy, here it is.
Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. It's still weird for me to come up with the whole idea that Vanderbilt is good.
That's what I knew you were going to bring up. They're hosting game day. That should be illegal.
They're hosting game day, and they should be. But here's the thing. I'm just going to say this. Vanderbilt is a college football playoff contender.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that even. Now, I might have thought they could beat this LSU team because I'm just not enamored of them. Although they could play some offense, but they couldn't play any defense. It's like everything flipped on them. But I might have figured Vandy could beat LSU, but the more I see them, the more I think they've got themselves a team that, why can't they be the 9th or 10th or 11th seed in the playoff?
Yeah, when I say no doubt, I'm not saying no doubt they make it. I'm saying no doubt they're a contender. They're a legitimate contender. I mean, I don't see them beating Tennessee. I mean, I'm not sure about that. And Tennessee's path is, because, they're in the SEC, so they're going to get in somehow. Tennessee has played 2 good teams and lost to both of them. And then next, I think they play Oklahoma is their only big game until Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
So they could get to the college football playoff by simply beating Oklahoma and Vanderbilt.
That's it. That's the other thing about these large conferences, right? You miss some teams, and you have these crazy imbalanced schedules. Like Alabama just ran a gauntlet. Oklahoma, which is now 6-1, despite the loss to Texas, is about to hit a gauntlet that they stuffed South Carolina at South Carolina, but now it gets hard. It's all ranked opponents basically from now on out. And yet some of the teams in the SEC, and it's like this in the Big Ten as well, have schedules that are vastly less hard, less difficult. And it's just because of how large the conferences are, you can't even them out. And obviously you also don't know from year to year to year how good anybody's going to be, because every team can be completely different because of NIL and the portal.
Yeah, because Texas is not very good.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
You beat Texas, it's like the logos. We're going to hear about Tennessee. Oh, this should be in because SEC. And it's like SEC, like what SEC? If they beat Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, therefore they're a playoff team? I just don't understand that.
That's what we heard last year. These
Yeah.
teams should be in over Indiana because they played and beat who exactly? Like, I didn't have any sympathy for Ole Miss. They got beat at home by a terrible Kentucky team last year. I didn't have any sympathy. Don't lose that game and you're in. So, but that's what we're going to hear, and it's all about SEC. But every SEC schedule is not made the same. Every Big Ten
Exactly.
schedule is not made the same, and that's what we got to get to. Now, it's going to be hard, but that's what we got to get to understanding. So, is Georgia Tech the best team in the ACC?
I mean, I think that I'm going to say no. I really, and I think Miami and Louisville are the two best teams in the ACC. I think Georgia Tech's right there. Like this is not the top of the ACC is not this dominant Ohio State kind of force, but it's
Right.
no slouch either. Those three teams, even though Georgia Tech and Louisville are not a traditional brand name we hear all the time, those are two very good football teams, and I think they can beat a lot of people. So the Georgia Tech game is going to be very interesting. But what drives me crazy is if Georgia beats Georgia Tech, it's going to be, see, they're not that good. It's like, what? Georgia just beat Ole Miss. Like, Georgia's very good. The
Right.
standard of being good is not beating Georgia. If that's the case, and get Tennessee out of here. So, but I think that Georgia Tech, they're so well coached. If I'm them, I'm worried about losing my head coach. I think he could be somebody that's plucked away for a bigger school with bigger budget, bigger money. He loses guys in the portal every year because they're not contending with NIL the same way other schools are. So to answer your question, no, but it's a fair argument to say they are. Like, I don't think anyone's crazy to say that they are.
I don't either. And I just wanted to make sure, because what happens is we talked about A&M flying under the radar. I mean, Georgia Tech is flat out flying under the radar. Now, they're ranked number 7 in this week's AP poll, but I'm just saying we don't pay any attention to them because when it comes to the ACC, we've only talked about Miami. Now we're talking about Louisville. We talk about what's wrong with Clemson. We don't talk about Georgia Tech. All they do is keep winning, right? They're one of the very few unbeatens left. I think there's 5 or 6 left maybe it's just, it's 5, I think, but it's Ohio State, it's Indiana, it's Texas A&M, it's Georgia Tech, and you have to go all the way down to BYU.
BYU, yeah.
And Navy, I think, is unbeaten too. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, and then Memphis and USF each have 1 loss, and they play this coming Saturday.
Memphis took a terrible loss to UAB.
They did, the Fighting Mortensons, but that game, I thought game day should have been this would have been a kind of a cool, group of 5 opportunity. I don't know if we even still call it that, but to have Memphis versus USF, because the winner of that's probably going to the playoff.
Yeah, and I think had Memphis taken care of business, probably would have. But look, hey, speaking of coaches that might get plucked, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. I don't know how you don't take a long look at him. When you can do that at Vanderbilt, by the way, that's how James Franklin got the Penn State job, is by winning at Vanderbilt. If you can win at Vanderbilt, you can win a lot of places. And now Clark Lee's doing it in the new mode where you bring in guys and pay them money, and then you assemble a team, which is what you have to do now. So he's doing it in the newfangled way. And if you're one of these big boys who's looking for a coach, I don't know why that's not one of your first calls.
And don't underestimate the Jerry Kill factor, who wins everywhere he goes, and he's like the senior offensive consultant. What a great idea by Lee for his first ever head coaching gig at a major school, to bring in someone's experience as Kill. He went to New Mexico State and won. I mean, the guy wins everywhere he goes. He put Northern Illinois, on the map, and he's won at Minnesota.
Tremendous coach. And in fact, if he didn't have sort of the seizure issues, he'd still be head coaching somewhere better than New Mexico State.
He'd be in the Big Ten. It's
absolutely. So, I mean, he sort of had a star-crossed career because of the health issues. But yeah, no, he's great. And he also, bringing him in was sort of how you got Diego Pavia and a couple other guys from that.
100% how you got him.
Yeah. So Diego Pavia, by the way, is one of those kids. I don't know that he can play in the NFL. I don't think he can. I mean, I don't want to write him off, but he's one of those great college quarterbacks because he's like what he is before he's a quarterback is he's a winner and a leader.
He's a gamer.
He wills his team. He's a gamer. That's it. That's right. So
who are some of your Heisman? It changes every week, but who are some of your Heisman guys right now? I mean, I guess Simpson's in the mix. Maybe Jeremiah Love after his
Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame. Yeah. Had 270 all-purpose yards or something like that last night to beat USC.
Shut him down in the opener, but it was so early you can kind of get away with it. What about Mendoza?
Yeah, at Indiana.
Yeah, he's got to be in the mix.
There's several, and there's time for other guys to pop up or pop back up on the radar too. But it does feel like you're kind of down to that. Is there? And I don't know if there's a defensive player that it's so hard to really give those guys a look.
Yeah, Ruben Bain's name came up, but he's getting more pressure then he gets more pressure than he does sacks a lot of times. Like he just brings the absolute havoc in the play, and people to get rid of the ball really quickly. So I feel like to get a Heisman in his position, you have to rack up all these sacks, and he has some. They're not going to give you a Heisman because of all the pressures you get, but he is such a game changer. I saw that PFF had him graded the number 1 rated player overall so far this year as of last week.
Don't sleep on Julian Sayin from Ohio State.
Yeah,
I don't know that he
great.
can actually get into the legit mix to get to New York, but we haven't even mentioned Ohio State. All they are is number 1, rolling over everybody. They look like they're head and shoulders above everybody else. I don't know if they are, but that's what they look like, 7 games in. They have not been, they've had 0 issues. The only test they ever had was that game against Texas, and they were clearly the better team. Now, that doesn't mean as much as it did when they beat them, but Julian Sayin is developing into a really good, really steady quarterback. It helps to have all those guys around him, obviously, and a defense that's crazy good too. But he's really good.
I don't see them slowing down. It's hard to win back to back, obviously. So like anything can happen, but I mean, they have to be obviously the favorite right now.
I think it's wide open. Here's what I'm going to say. The race to get into the playoff is wide open. I don't know that there's a prohibitive favorite to win the playoff, and that's no slight to Ohio State. I just am like, I could like draw schools out of a hat at this point and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And really, it probably can get beyond the top 10 at this point. Thinking that now, I don't think number 10 is Vanderbilt. I don't think Vanderbilt can win the national championship. I'm sorry, but
they cannot.
There's a bunch of teams in here, like Notre Dame coming back from off the radar is up to number 12 at 5-2. I think they could win the national title based on how they're playing.
Yeah, definitely.
And almost everybody in the top 10, you'd be like, yeah, I can see a scenario where they could win the playoff, not just get in, win it.
Yeah, Georgia definitely can. Bama, of course, can. Oregon can. Indiana can.
I think so.
Up front and have a quarterback. That's the formula,
so.
Right? Be strong up front and have a quarterback, and they have
That's
that.
Right. That's right. I don't know what I think about Georgia Tech yet, but I don't want to.
I would say them a no. I just feel like they don't have enough firepower to win it.
Right. And I'm a little down on Ole Miss. Now, they get a chance. They go into Norman this week against an Oklahoma team whose defense is as good as anybody in the country, but its offense is just okay. So they've got a chance to make some noise there. But I don't know what I think about them. I think Miami can win a national title despite Friday night. I do not know what I think about BYU.
I think they'll cause a little bit of havoc. Maybe you don't want to draw first round. They could pull some kind of close game. I'll like your play on words there, where you said Oklahoma's offense is just okay. Good job with the Oklahoma abbreviation. All my Texas friends say, what they say about Oklahoma, it's just okay.
That's exactly right. That's what they say. Hey, when I was, we lived in Norman for a while, and we the local running store is OK Runner.
Love it.
So you're like, if you wore their gear, it was just, hey, I'm just an okay runner.
You and I met for the first time over dinner in Norman.
That's right. First time we met. Yeah. So, but you wear that gear and it just says okay runner. And if you wear it somewhere else, they're like, that's a good joke. I mean, no, that's the store. That is all I am. But that's just the store, the name of the store. Okay runner. So he's not good, not bad. He's okay.
He's okay.
So. All right. Anything else from the weekend? Notre Dame beating USC. That's a good USC team. Lincoln Riley still doesn't have them where he's supposed to have them, by now and earlier. But this Notre Dame team is really good. They're really good. I don't care that they lost those first 2. They're really good. They're rolling.
They easily could have beaten Texas A&M, and they could have beaten Miami. Miami got a big lead on them, and they came back. Miami to kick a field goal, and that's how close those games were. And what was like a botched snap on an extra point that cost them against Texas A&M? I mean, that kind of there's just no room. There's no margin for error in college football right now because there's so much parity that's happening in the game. Just one little play here, one little play there. The Holy War, BYU Utah. Is always a fun rivalry game that a lot of the country doesn't know about or pay attention to. That's just a fun rivalry, very intense rivalry. They call it the rich Mormons versus the state school Mormons. In that game,
that's right.
Utah versus private school BYU. So to me, that was a huge win for BYU to go undefeated. And so that was an exciting game. And then, of course, Texas Tech going down. We mentioned that. That was significant. And then Georgia Tech beating Duke. And I'm not trying to claim that Duke is some power, but they were undefeated in the ACC. They play good defensive Manny as their head coach, and here Georgia Tech goes, and they fought for a while and pull away at the end. They're just that kind of gritty, Keys team that gets that kind of stuff done.
Yeah, that's right. It was a big weekend, and it really started with that game in in Miami on Friday night, and sort of you knew some crazy things could happen. And it wasn't that everything is an upheaval week, but the top 10 got reordered. That's what happened.
And Florida State lost at Stanford in the middle of the night.
Yeah, in the middle of the night, Stanford playing with an interim coach. And
Former
look,
president
Florida,
of Reformed Theological Seminary in Charlotte, Frank Reich.
that's right. That's exactly right. Probably better known to most people as former, Indianapolis Colts coach and just longtime former NFL quarterback. But that's right. One time president of Reformed Theological Seminary.
And Miami fans
Charlotte.
know him as, he's famous for leading the comeback against the Oilers in the playoffs. Miami fans know as he did the exact same thing almost for Maryland against Miami in the Orange Bowl and had this crazy deficit that he came back on. So that's kind of how Miami fans remember him. So Reich's been around for a long time and playing football a long time. If I'm Andrew Luck, I'm doing whatever I can to try to talk him into staying and being the head coach.
Yeah, I don't think he will. Of course, Andrew Luck, the former Stanford great, there is now the general manager in a weird position where general manager is above head coach. And
I'm hearing from people, just in my college football conversations, that could become part of the future.
I think so.
Where the GM in college football has more power. Now, with the coach making so much money, I don't know if that's possible right this second, but if that ever changes at all, that whole new model, because they're professionals now, right? The players are getting paid lots of money. Do we start this new system where a GM kind of calls the shots and is in charge with roster management and putting together the team and this coaching staff and assembling all? I'm interested. Again, the game's changed so much in just 3 years, 4 years. Who's to say that might not happen whenever the GM's calling the shots and the head coach is like an NFL head coach?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, the one place, the way Stanford has it is interesting, but you could like write that off to Stanford as its own sort of quirky animal, right? And Andrew Luck is the guy there. But what's interesting to me is Oklahoma went out and hired Jim Nagy, who was the Senior Bowl's leader, executive director or whatever, to be of equal footing with Brent Venables, the head coach. And they did that in the offseason. I don't know how that works in practicality, but I think you may at least see that sort of a side-by-side thing.
I'm interested to see how that develops over the next couple of years.
For sure. Real quick, that loss to Stanford is a terrible loss. Florida State, I think, Mike Norvell and I think he's in hot water. And so, but we'll see where that goes. But that loss, the Florida State fans who stayed up really late are going, that was a touchdown on the last play of the game. And I think they're right. But the idea that you had to score that touchdown to potentially tie the game with no time left against that Stanford team is everything that's wrong with it. And Ball would have been lying had you won that game.
And Stanford is asking, why were 2 seconds added back on the clock? In that middle of the field kind of Hail Mary-ish they threw, like on the first down.
Right.
So
that's right.
They would argue that play shouldn't even have happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's always 5 or 6 plays that go one way or the other. That's one of my beefs right now with Auburn fans who, and frankly, I really like and appreciate Hugh Freeze, but I think he sort of fed this mentality a little bit over some of they've gotten been on the wrong end of some bad calls.
Oh yeah.
But when you play the victim, to me, that's a bad look.
Is officiating worse than it normally is this year? Or do we just get more access to it because of social media? It just seems like it's off everywhere right now.
I think we get more access to it. I don't know if there's a crisis in officiating. I also think some of the things we think were bad calls probably are good calls, and we just don't know it sometimes. And I don't have a specific one to point to. Those guys do a really good job. Here's what I'm going to say. When you're wanting to point to that one officiating call, there's 5 or 6 plays that the opponent wants back too. And there's 5 or 6 plays that your players blew that had any one of those gone a different way would have changed the outcome of the game. It wouldn't have mattered what that call was. I get tired of that, the narrative they're out to get it. They're clearly not out to get you.
That's what's dumb, is when you really actually think that a conference wants you to lose, or that's just dumb.
Yeah. So, well, hey, we could go a lot of places here, but real quick, there's a few games I'm really interested in. Ole Miss at Oklahoma, I mentioned that earlier. Texas A&M at LSU will be interesting. Does LSU have one more kind of big shot in them, or is A&M going to keep rolling? I'm interested in a weird off-the-radar game. UCLA, Jerry Neuheisel offensive coordinator train at Indiana. I don't think they're going to win it. I don't think they're going to win it.
Right now. They got a lot of momentum, UCLA. That'd be something, wouldn't it?
I just think it's fun. We would not, the idea that 3 weeks ago I would have said this is crazy. And the idea that, just talking about Indiana as number 2 in the country 2 years ago is crazy. But I just find that to be an intriguing game, and we'll see where it goes. And I'm going to be interested to chart where Jerry Neuheisel ends up next year. So
And for those who like, in-state rivalry games, got Kansas State this weekend.
that's a good
I
one.
just love those kind of games. Just a college football fan. Has
Sunflower Showdown,
no
right?
national implications whatsoever, but I just love those kind of rivalry games.
That's the stuff that's great about college football. That's the stuff you don't want to lose. For example, the Bedlam rivalry, Oklahoma State, is gone. That's terrible. It's
Yeah, they're talking
terrible.
about USC Notre Dame going away.
That's terrible, and that's a Lincoln Riley thing.
Man, I get all worked up about that.
No, Lincoln. Let me put it this way: if you're USC, you should not make that decision based on what a head coach who might be there 5 more years or might be there 5 more months, 5 more weeks. And I don't think he's going to get fired. I'm just saying he is not the program. You don't do that based on what one specific current time coach wants to do. That is way too important to the program and to the history of college football.
Yes,
I don't know what they'll do.
Alone.
Yep. So, all right. Well, we need to wrap this half up and get into the locker room and come back. When we come back, we will talk about our favorite subject, which is our shared faith in Christ. So we'll be right back right after this. And second half of Gridiron the Gospel, a faith in college football podcast, is starting right now. I'm George Schroeder. He's Dean Insera. And this is our favorite segment, or our favorite half, which is the faith half, because as much as I love football, as much as Dean loves football, man, it pales in comparison for, first of all, the love that Christ has for us. And so the love that he's allowed us and helped us to return to him. I love Jesus a whole lot more than I love college football. And I hope that's the case in everything in life. And I know that you feel the same way, Dean. And so I love just when we get a chance to just sort of sit down and talk for a few minutes about faith. And I also know that you've got some thoughts, because a lot of times it ties in one way or another to college football. So you've got some thoughts
I do.
this week.
In the theme of football, the most recent Heisman winner, Travis Hunter, got baptized before the Seahawks-Jags game. Last 2 Sundays ago, the Jags lost that game, but the morning before the games was a 1:00 kick, and that morning apparently he got baptized, like at his church, which is just really neat. But Skip Bayless went viral by kind of going off on a rant about it, saying that he should be focused on football, not getting baptized. And the amount of players I saw reply to that and say that's ridiculous, that he did the right thing, Christ before everything else, Christ more important than football. There seems to be a major swing happening in pro sports where forever kind of cultural Christianity has been a part of sports. Kind of faith. We talk about faith football, that kind of idea. Point to the sky when you score a touchdown or when you hit a home run. When you get interviewed after the game, I want to thank God, for blessing me. And all that's all great. But you never really saw many guys literally talking about their testimony, their story. Who is Jesus? It just seemed much more kind of like a good luck charm kind of idea, sort of faith. You're seeing more and more players right now being clear about what they believe about Jesus. And he actually is their savior. Those baseball players wearing the t-shirts that Jesus won, those type of things.
Right.
And I just continue to be encouraged as a dad too, with kids who pay attention. You see, there's so many Christian athletes right now that I can point my boys to and send them a video, have them watch this clip, watch this story, watch this testimony. Our friend Jason Ramondo, I've talked about this before on the podcast, with Sports Spectrum, puts out a lot of stories. If the parents out there, I'd love for you to, I'm just not some random thing. Jason didn't ask me to do this, but love for you to maybe think about me for a Christmas present. Subscribe to Sports Spectrum magazine, for your son or daughter, to be able to read about athletes, men and women, who are living for Christ. Like, it's not a cultural Christian thing, it's a convictional Christian thing. And it's just been really encouraging to me to see that happening across the sport right now. The sports world is actual real believers. The Oklahoma softball team a couple years ago at their press conference, they sat there and talked about Jesus. Not big man upstairs faith. But actual Jesus. And it's just been so neat to see. And it's only increasing. And I'm just really encouraged by that right now.
Yeah. One of my friends is a pastor in Norman. I've got several friends who are pastors in Norman because we lived there for a while. But a couple of years ago, the All-America shortstop was a fiance. She's now married to their punter, the Oklahoma football team's punter. And the punter had begun coming to my friend's church, which is probably not the hot, hip sort of college student church. He just wanted someplace where somebody was going to feed him consistently, kind of line by line from God's word, Sunday after Sunday. And he was a regular for that couple of years that he was, and that's the thing about it. It's sort of transitional because they're transient when they're college students. But it was really encouraging to my friend, the pastor, and I completely understand why. And it was real. and it was real. He really believed it was also real in the shortstop, the softball player, and so I do love seeing that. My family follows Baylor football. Sawyer Robertson is a talented quarterback, but he cares about following Jesus. I mean, we see that all over the place in
really
the
is. It's
Ohio
really
State
confident.
players that we've seen that have sort of like been very outspoken, not just about being baptized, but then in sharing their testimonies and stuff at various events. And you want their lives to back that, and you pray that they're getting good discipling. But it feels like there's something real going on. And I don't know what it is. And maybe it's just we're talking about it in sports. We're talking about specifically in football, but it's potentially a microcosm or just a small slice of what's perhaps happening. I would hope some people have sensed that maybe something's going on in the larger culture. I sure hope that's the case because, man, we need Christ. But something's happening, and you see it with these guys in football because they have a profile. I love that. And I do love what Jason Romano does. So shout out to him.
Yeah, definitely.
They do a really good job of making certain, I think, that the guys that they have on sort of his podcast and also the people they feature in Sports Spectrum magazine, I think are really following Jesus.
Oh yeah, I
And
totally
man,
trust Jason, no doubt.
yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned him too. We're teaching through Titus in our church. So Titus 3 this morning, where Paul tells Titus, who's posted on the island of Crete. He's setting up new churches on Crete. There's a bunch of new believers. He says, remind them to submit to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to slander no one, to avoid fighting, and to be kind, always showing gentleness to all people. Now, there's a whole lot more there. We went on through verse 7 this morning, and it's a tremendous passage. But there's a couple of reasons there. One, Paul wants you to bring glory to God with how you conduct yourself, how you live your life, being ready for every good work. It isn't just submitting, it isn't just obeying, it's being ready for every good work. Do good work in your community. Whereas around you, you see people speaking evil of one another and fighting. I mean, our culture is angry, right? We know that. You're instead to be kind, always showing gentleness to all people. And if Christians live like that, godly lives filled with good works, then it is distinctively different. It's an exceptional life, and it points to the one who saved you. It
Amen.
Points to the gospel you say you believe. Your life proves the truth of the gospel if you're doing that. So that's why it was so important on Crete. It's why it's so important right now, right here. And I love that. And I say that to say, those of you who are watching us on YouTube will get this. Otherwise, you won't. But several years ago, our church was a distribution point after a hurricane, like a relief distribution point. And so we ended up with, for some period of time, we had pallets of water bottles, right? That then would get broken apart and distributed to various places. Lots of plastic bottles and some aluminum cans too. And it was kind of weird. The aluminum cans were. All the plastic bottles are long gone, but we still have some of the aluminum cans. They're weird because the aluminum cans that say water very prominently on one side, I'm going to hold this up for anybody who's actually watching on YouTube. They say water, that's what they are, but they're a product of the Anheuser-Busch Company, which I'm guessing most of
beer. It looks
Yeah.
just for those listening. It looks just like a can of beer.
Yeah, it looks just like a can of beer because it's just your basic 12-ounce can. And look, I know every so often you'll find water in a can, but not usually. But basically, the Anheuser-Busch people, and good on them, wanted to sort of help out. So they took some of their cans and they labeled them as water, and they put water. Presumably, they put water in them.
Allegedly.
I haven't checked it out.
So we've heard.
But I've got a 6-pack of this Anheuser-Busch water, which, we'll see. But here's what my point is. I wonder if that's a little bit like what we sometimes see. And this is not I'm not trying to talk about drinking or not drinking. I'm just saying I have questions about whether that's water or not. Is this a little bit like what we sometimes see when you have people who say they love Jesus, they profess to have faith in Christ, but their life doesn't look like what they say they are, right? And so you're like, that guy says he has the living water, but his life looks a lot more like everybody else in the world. And so my question for y'all is this: Christ follower, if you say you've got the living water, is your life wrapped with the markings of the world? That's my question for you to consider this week. And so my prayer is that you're going to look like the guy who's submitting to rulers and authorities, obeying, being ready for every good work, to slander no one, to avoid fighting, being kind, always showing gentleness to all people. And the idea of all people is exactly what it sounds like. It's all people,
Everybody.
because
Yeah.
we want to bring God glory with our lives, and we want other people to come to know him and bring him glory too. So
Good
I
word.
just, it's on my heart, right? So, and that's of course what we've called one of the segments here, but I'm encouraged by what's going on in our, in and around our culture, I hope, in terms of perhaps people coming to Christ. Certainly, though, you definitely are seeing it in college football. And I pray that it's A, real, and B, that they are getting good discipling.
Definitely.
So y'all should pray for them too.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what I got. It
Good
just,
stuff. Thanks for that.
yeah. So, yeah, and if anybody really wants an Anheuser-Busch water, I've got 6 of them right here. So
Nice.
probably just going to put them back in the closet till the next time. So, Dean, anything else going on with you?
No, things are good here. Church is going full speed ahead. We're really thankful with what's happening in the local church across America, and we're seeing it happen here in Tallahassee. And Tassie's a little not too thrilled about the state of football, but we got a lot more exciting things happening here in terms of what's happening in the faith community and people coming to faith in Christ and getting baptized. It's just been really neat to see. So all is well. Yeah, things are good here.
Man, I'm so glad. And listen, the local church is where it's at. I know that's
thing going.
That's your thing, the best thing going. And so y'all, let me encourage you, be in God's word and be in your local church. And by be in it, I don't just mean be there on Wednesdays or Sundays. I mean, be a part, be a participant.
Participate in God's design for his people.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, that's all the time we got. Let me just say this: if anything we've said has struck a chord with you on anything football, but especially faith in Christ, email us at gridirongospelpod@gmail.com. You can reach out on Twitter at George Schroeder or at Dean and Sarah. We'd love to talk with you. And if you, in fact, just want to see the picture of the Anheuser-Busch water, you can find that if you'll just go to YouTube and check us out. Just search for Gridiron and the Gospel. The show gets recorded and posted to YouTube too. I know most of you guys are listening to us on your various podcast platforms. Please rate, review, and subscribe those. That really helps. We appreciate that. And tune in next week for more Gridiron and the Gospel, a faith in college football podcast.